Okay, so now we can continue on. I will reshare. Okay, and all right. And then we did it by themes. And we've talked about what's the major theme of an attraction. We got amusement and theme parks, zoo, aquarium, botanical, landmark and destination, cultural, outdoor adventure, family entertainment, festivals and events, destination shopping, nature and trails, tours, arenas, and stadiums, which is a lot of the sports and music venues. So, are there any questions about what we talked about last week? Did you guys, anyone have an aha moment? Did anyone have a, I'm gonna, any questions that arise? Did you think of anything else that, that popped into your head afterwards that you were thinking, okay, we should probably, should have put this in here as well, or are we good?
I think we're good.
All right. All right, I got to get the right. So let me just switch my gears here. All right, so we have examples of attractions, and I'm gonna just share this in the chat, and you guys can switch to this Padlet. And what we did here is we listed out the types of attractions by theme that we came up with last week. And what I'd like everybody to do is let's spend some time and list out the actual names of attractions that you think fit under each of these headers.
Here we go. Yeah,
there we go.
Got it started there.
Perfect. It's not a race or a competition. It's a matter of perfect.
I'm gonna put one in for you, Chuck. Just give you a little plug.
Oh, thanks, dude. Is anyone having trouble getting logged in? Because if you are more than welcome to. You can type your answers into the chat, and we'll put them up for you. And you just say say the name of the place and which one you think it fits under, and we can do that for you if you're having trouble getting logged in. Perfect. The ROM, excellent. There we go. Now they're coming fast and furious. I like the CNE, perfect. Yep, that fits. Yeah, because we had zoos LinkedIn with sort of that botanical as well, so that's perfect. If there's a chance you guys can put your name on them, so I know who to compliment, that would be cool.
You have to log in to do that, I guess.
Oh, do you? Oh, never mind then.
Taj Mahal.
Yeah, Taj Mahal, yeah. Oh yeah, tell us. Don't worry about it. It's good. Just going anonymous is just fine. Here we go. Yeah. Lauren, have you been to Gordon Ramsay's in Vegas? Because if you haven't, I'm going to be really jealous.
No, I just think it'd be awesome, and I watch
Yeah.
a lot of Gordon Ramsays.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%.
yeah, but my family and I always talk about like if we ever went to Vegas, we'd definitely go there. So
Yep.
Just a question, if
Busy.
you don't mind.
Yeah, of
Are we
course.
Yeah.
doing like whole world thing, or are we sticking to Ontario or Canada?
Yeah, you can go wherever you want. This is about just making sure
Oh.
that we've got an idea. So if you can go anywhere in the world that pops into your head. You can what we're going to find is you're going to start to see how because we're going under theme here, but then the physical attributes are going to be different for a lot of these under the same theme, and this is where we're trying to get to, and you can already start to see it. There's a big difference on cultural between the Pickering Museum Village and the ROM. They're both cultural attractions, though. Oh, I like that one, Britt. Old Quebec, nice. All right, keep on going, because there's lots and lots and lots more. And like I said, this is just to get you. This is like a wake your brain up, and start thinking about all these different things. I'm going to add a few in here too. Put that one in there. Oh, I put that in the right spot. Good.
The Lost Chambers in the Atlantis, Dubai.
I want to go there.
That sounds mysterious.
No, that's that huge water park, isn't it? We've been near there when we were on.
That's no, well, there's one in Dubai too. Yeah.
Oh, that's
But
Dubai. Sorry.
Yeah, there's one in Bahamas as well.
Sorry, as
Yeah.
soon as I thought I didn't read the Dubai part. You're right. I have not been to Dubai. I want to go there. And that's a zoo or aquarium. That's cool. Got. Oh, perfect. Lauren, good kayaking. Bay of Fundy. Those are excellent too. Vancouver Island. All right. Oh, good. Got palladium in there. Perfect. Yep. Over one here. So Great Wolf Lodge. All right. What do we think, guys? Want to start going through them and we can just add as we go at the bottom? Because this is a pretty good list. All right, so let's start going through on the amusement park. So we've got Wonderland, Disneyland, Wet and Wild, Universal, Santa's Village, Calypso, Great Wolf Lodge. So we've got a good combination of really, really, really big and not so big, so when if you were to describe Wonderland using the physical attributes, you could say that Wonderland is a large ticketed gated seasonal attraction, right? Or amusement park. Mike, did I miss anything there?
No, well, that sums it up in the most basic way. Yeah, that's that it is, that it fits all those physical attributes, and it's, and I think, in terms of it's outdoors, that's right. Yeah.
I'll go back to share my screen here. I don't know why it. There we go. Anything else you guys want? You can put it in the chat. If you were to describe Wonderland, was there anything else that you think I missed from a physical attribute? No? Okay. And then you've got Disneyland or Disney World. They're interchangeable. Well, no, actually they're not. They're two different parks and they're completely different. Sorry, Michael. Yeah. All right, Mike, how would you describe that one?
Well, it fits a lot of the same descriptors. So it's a large, or well, super large outdoor. I would say it's not seasonal now. The Disney parks are open year round, so that would be different on that. It's definitely gated. So it does tick a lot of the boxes, except that, yes, the difference, obviously is in their operating season is, versus seasonal. So they fit in a whole different bucket of amusement parks.
Yeah. Yeah, and in North America, Mike, what's the breakdown of season? Like because you've been in the industry long enough. Like,
Yep.
How does it all work? What's the breakdown of seasonal versus year round and attendance levels and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, if you looked at something like, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at or heard of IAAPA. I'll type it in the chat. IAAPA. So that's the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, and they're a huge association. They have a massive trade show every November. That's in Orlando, and it's huge. It'll take you days to walk through it. It's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, I went a couple of years ago. It was crazy.
And they do a lot of training and development, and it's sort of, we'll say, learning for professionals in the industry. But when they look at their breakdowns and they sort of look at amusement parks in North America, typically the breakdowns, because you can't compare them, sort of, it's not an apples to apples thing. So when you compare, whether it's attendance or sort of financials or anything else like that, you've got this sort of, at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, you have these sort of year-round amusement parks that would fit in the Disney, primarily your Disney, Universal buckets, and they would be your sort of mega parks that, you know, or multi-parks. I mean, Disney World in Orlando is not just one park, it's several parks. So they all get ranked out independently, right? The Magic Kingdom, Epcot Center, you know, what do they call it? Hollywood Studios now, or, you know, Animal Kingdom, you name it. So they rank those out. And then in the sort of next tier below it, you have these sort of year-round, but not, their draw is a little, not quite as wide, whereas a Disney or Universal's drawing people from pretty much, you know, all over North America, Europe, worldwide, you know. And then you have the sort of year-round parks like the Lego lands that are down in the southern US and stuff like that, that are operating year-round, that are still substantial parks. They're just not quite as big. And then you have what Wonderland sits in is kind of your regional, seasonal amusement park bucket, which is going to include your, you know, Canada's Wonderlands, your Cedar Points, you know, anything Six Flags parks, all those kinds of things. And so when they rank them out, they usually do that. And then you'll have this sort of, you know, the different tiers that sort of sit below it, right? They, you know, sort of small, very regional, local type of parks or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how it sort of sorts out. And attendance and sort of has something to do with how they bucket it out. So how many visitors that they would have in a given year. And so then they kind of look at that too. So
Yeah.
Interesting to notice that Canada's Wonderland is usually in the top 3 in their category in terms of attendance. Probably not this year, but in a normal year, they would be in the sort of seasonally run amusement park bucket. Canada's Wonderland in some years has been the top, the number 1 attended seasonal amusement park in North America, but usually sits in the top 3 between, you know, is them, Cedar Point, Six Flags, Magic Mountain.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just going to skip down to Santa's Village because we're talking about these amusement and theme parks. So Santa's Village, as Mike was just talking about, fits under that same category as a Wonderland or a Disneyland in its to describe it physically, it's a small, seasonal, gated, ticketed outdoor a theme park, because it's got the rides, it's got all that stuff, but the scale of it is much smaller. So has anyone ever been to Santa's Village besides me? Mike, have you gone?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, come on. It's halfway to the North Pole. You have to go to Santa's Village.
Fair enough. Yeah. So that is, so that is the difference, right? It fits the same theme, but from a scale and how you have to operationalize it, it's going to be a lot different. Let's throw something out there for the chat here. Where does Marineland fit? Where would you put Marineland? Would you put Marineland as a zoo, or would you put Marineland as an amusement park? Just type what you think. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm curious what everyone thinks here. Just type what you think in the chat. Yes, it can go both, but if you were to pick one, which one do you think you would pick? Because I don't even know which one I would pick. Amusement park, yeah. Amusement park, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be the same as something like a SeaWorld amusement park down in the States, where you have a lot of live marine animal shows and a park kind of built up around it. So one of those chicken and egg stories is like, what came first? Was it the animal attraction, or was it the amusements, in terms of, what they decided to do in terms of that business?
Yeah, and yeah, I think I agree with that. Everyone's talking it from amusement park.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Marineland has rides.
That's right, and
everybody loves Marineland, according to
everyone does love Marineland, except for maybe the animals that are there. Sorry, that was. Oh man, it's being recorded. Strike that from the conversation. We'll have to.
I hope nobody from Marineland is on the call.
Yeah,
today.
No, it's okay. it has its place, and a lot of people go. But you're right, it has a lot of rides, and I think that's where their future. They're focused more on their rides and that sort of stuff. So. Okay, then you've got like the Wet and Wild and Calypso, which is out towards Ottawa. And Mike, what would you do for your descriptors there?
Well, definitely seasonal, outdoor, gated. I think we had a description in sometime last week. We talked about sort of wet versus dry.
Yes.
So these are definitely wet attractions. Definitely interactive or active, not passive.
Yeah. Okay. And then Great Wolf Lodge. That's an interesting one. I'm really glad someone put that up there. And actually, the other thing we can do here, I guess I could have been doing is we could be adding comments in here, and we can put the descriptors right here. So I'll do that as we're doing it. So with Great Wolf Lodge, or if anyone else wants to do it, you can just go in. So I would say it's indoor. And, well, it's wet. Year round. And well, it's almost, because last week I thought someone brought up the idea of VIP gated, right? So it's VIP access. So you can't go to the water park at Great Wolf Lodge unless you're staying there. And I don't think that's changed yet. You can't buy a day pass to go use the pools at Great Wolf Lodge, which is different than the water park above the parking garage in downtown Niagara Falls.
Falls View.
Yeah, the Falls View, exactly. So this is where, because when you guys wrote that last week, I was trying to think of a scenario where it's VIP access, and my mind went to things like the Fast Pass at Wonderland and other things like that. But this is a really good example of a VIP type of access. So I'm gonna add that in there. What else is it, Mike? I think I got most of them?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So and then Fantasy Fair and yeah, it's big. What do you think, Mike? I almost put it as a family attraction, but then I'm thinking, no, I think it fits the bill.
Fantasy Fair at the Woodbine Center Mall.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know who in the chat is aware of what Fantasy Fair is at the Woodbine Center Mall. Is that a really is what they call a really deep cut here on amusement parks, or is that something that people are familiar with? Yeah, Talis doesn't know what it is.
Okay.
I never heard of it either. Here, let me see if I can put a link up to it in the chat. Fantasy Fair is at the Woodbine Center Mall. That's in here's the link. In it's sort of the West Toronto, Rexdale, what do they call that area? Near the Woodbine racetrack.
Yeah, just east of the
it was
airport.
An interesting concept. And yeah, it's an interesting concept. Think of like probably a larger, more sort of well-known example would be of something like this would be the
West Edmonton Mall.
West Edmonton Mall or Mall of America, or there's a brand new one too in New York with that one called American Dream. But basically you have this sort of amusement park inside a mall kind of concept. So Fantasy Fair is kind of it's very niche. It's old, a little bit. It's kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, but they have small attractions, mostly for young kids and families. So, Ferris wheels and stuff like that. So I put a link up in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say
But that's-
they definitely have rides.
Well, they
Right.
call themselves on their website Ontario's largest indoor amusement park, and I guess I can't argue with them about that.
Largest
Um,
in is the West Edmonton Mall thing gone, or is
Well,
West
this is
Edmonton-
Ontario's,
Oh,
not
are they said okay?
Canada. The West Edmonton Mall would definitely be bigger.
Yeah, I
but-
was gonna say.
and maybe the class would be more familiar with the West Edmonton Mall, but this one is a very niche attraction. Certainly an amusement park, but as you can see, that it's we'll call it its level of awareness, or sort of within the group is somewhat less than what the Wonderland or Disney or Universal, and that would be a function of kind of where it sits in its sort of inside the industry, right, in terms of size and scale. But certainly, it once again certainly fits the bigger sort of box, sort of attractions, amusement parks thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's how they describe themselves as well. But
That's right. Okay, so it's small. It is. Let me just.
year round.
Yeah, year round. Indoor. It
It
is
is
not gated.
new.
It is not. It's not gated. So it's open. Open access. That's how we'll say it. But it is ticketed. So you
Yeah,
can't-
or like a pay-per-use type of thing.
Yeah, you can't do anything. It's got one of the coolest slides I've seen. It's like a 3-story slide, which is a lot of fun. I used to take my kids there quite a bit. And it is well, that's about it. It's themed.
Yeah, it has its theme to it.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would like you guys to do now is click back into the Padlet and do what we just did here on these last two, because I wasn't smart enough to do it for all of them, and I'll go back in and change these ones, and pick a couple that you did, or a couple that Mike or I put up, and just in the comments add your descriptors, and then we'll go through them. So let's take about 5 or 6 minutes to get a few of those done, and then we'll go from there.
Excuse me, I do have a question if you don't mind before we go.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's about, for example, like the Burj Khalifa, or let's say the CN Tower. Now,
Yeah.
those are landmarks. If you want to see them from the outside, they are not ticketed. But if you want to go up, then they are ticketed. So what should we go for?
I don't know. What do you guys think? What's the
I'd
I
go.
would go with ticketed, frankly speaking.
Yeah, I would. To do the experience of it. You can see a landmark. Niagara Falls is another good example. Well, it is a landmark that cost you nothing, right? But CN Tower costs you nothing to see it, but there is an experience within it that does cost you money.
Yeah, I've been there, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice one.
Yeah. Okay. I'd say that that's a good way to describe it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So I'll go up and do. All right. See, Brittany's there. That's good, Brittany, with the ROM. That's excellent. We lost Susanna. She's back. Susanna, sorry about that. I hope you weren't waiting long. I didn't notice that you had got you had lost connection. Hopefully you didn't have to wait too long to get back in. couple here that I did. Had to change my one.
We didn't have any virtual attractions. I wonder if
Oh yeah,
that will change. I can't even think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure there are, but I'm wondering if that will change given that,
well,
the world has gone virtual in the last 2 years more than ever. So I'm sure there'll be people that someone who comes up with something. I mean, there's been that sort of the sort of growth of the drive-through attraction in the last 2 years, the Christmas lights ones and the
yeah,
that the Van Gogh experience thing that they're doing, and all those different ones that are obviously people had to kind of in the industry had to figure out how to sort of navigate the pandemic just like every other industry, right? So like almost a whole new sort of type of attraction was kind of born out of it, and whether they'll have traction as we hopefully move back to some level of normalcy.
yeah. A lot of good stuff going up here. Can you go in the Taj Mahal? And if you can, is it free to go in? I gotta get there.
I don't know. Has anybody here been to the Taj Mahal?
It's on my list.
Yeah, that would certainly be an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead, I'm going to Birmingham, England. That's not the same.
What's the major attraction in Nishad's been to the Taj Mahal?
Oh,
No
cool.
tickets.
No tickets. So that's really cool. That's cool. I would definitely want to go there.
So where in India is the Taj Mahal? What city would you have to go to first before you got to the Taj Mahal?
Where would you land?
Yeah, would you go to Delhi or Mumbai?
Agra. Okay.
Is it in the city, or do you have to like take a bus ride or a drive out of the city?
All right.
You go see the Taj Mahal, and then you go and have Indian food for the rest of your day, Chuck.
Oh, that's seriously, I'd be in heaven. Absolute heaven.
Oh, like a local bus or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I can imagine that is a very busy attraction. Something like the Great Wall of China would be also like in that.
I've stood on it, Michael. And that's because when I was in Beijing, I was at my hotel room, and I had to catch a flight into the interior, and my flight wasn't until the afternoon, and I went up to the concierge and I said, I need to take a taxi to. I said, here's my day. I got to be at the airport at 4. I want to go to the Great Wall of China first. And the guy looks at me and goes, well, the hotel's here. The Great Wall of China is way over here, and the airport's way over here. Like, it was an hour and a half, like this way to the Great Wall, and it was another hour and a half the other way to the airport. And I said, well, yesterday the Great Wall of China was 3,000 miles from me, so I'm quite okay with a an hour and a half car ride. So met a taxi driver who we negotiated a price for the day, and he went and he got rid of his taxi and brought his personal car, and we drove to the Great Wall, and I went up and I walked from one gondola along the wall to the other gondola and down. That's phenomenal. Really, really interesting. But the day before, I had done a hop on and hop off bus tour, which I thought was excellent too. Went to all the different sites, in
Beijing, yeah.
Beijing. Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I do have a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It's about the active passive part. We
Yeah.
didn't put that. So the question would be like, if we are talking about a hotel, would that be passive more or active more? Now, I know that it's mostly passive because people will enjoy the relaxing, sleeping, spa, etc., etc. But what about, for example, the pool part?
Well, we wouldn't actually put hotels in the attractions category.
No,
Hotel.
because I'm so sorry. I'm talking about, for example, Burj Al Arab, the one that I listed in landmarks, I guess.
Okay,
Which
and
one?
and what is it?
It's a landmark, but it's a hotel at the same time.
Oh, okay, the one in Dubai.
No, not Burj Khalifa. There is Burj Al Arab. I don't know where I added. I added somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, there
yeah.
it is. Yeah, I see it. I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a hotel, but it's a landmark. It's an attraction. It's like a mix of a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think sometimes, it would be what we're learning as we go through here is that attractions are so they can be categories in so many ways, and there's no one way to sort of bucket one in, and it's mostly because of the diversity of the industry, right? Because it's very entrepreneurial, and so people look for ways to combine what would have been several attractions into one large attraction, right? In order to sort of make the economics of it work, right? So, example would be the Great Wolf Lodge, right? Where you have it's a hotel with a water park in it, and so that in its own, I mean, what is, like, if you had to sort of describe it as an outsider, is it a hotel or is it a water park or is it both, or in sort of which one creates the reason for the other, right? So it's one of those things. So if you look at something like what you're talking about, in terms of, it's got all these different pieces, then though each piece may sort of sit in its own bucket, right? That it's like, these are passive elements within an attraction and these are active elements within an attraction. And in the industry, what you'll see is from, it depends on what your, how much does it cost to operate this attraction and how much to develop it, and that will dictate sort of how many people you need to draw into your attraction, right? Like, when we looked at the amusement park section there, the Fantasy Fair Mall, amusement park at Woodbine Center is operating in an entirely different reality than Disney World, right? In terms of all kinds of things between, they're, and one of them obviously is that financial consideration. So, something like Disney World would have to sort of, it would have more elements inside it. And you could probably take the magic, like just Disney World itself, that complex, and carve it up into multiple things. Like they have, if you've ever been there, it's, what is there, 14 hotels and 5 parks and a shopping district and the Wild World of Sports complex. So they may, if you took them, you could probably find an attraction in there that would fit almost every category that we have on this Padlet. Whereas Fantasy Fair is not going to ever be able to touch that, right? So I think that's Naf, I think that's a good observation that, sometimes it gets, the lines get a little blurry, especially when you start looking at how, people sort of, or industry stacks attractions on top of attractions to create larger attractions and sort of more sort of diverse things, because obviously it's driven by the appetite of the consumer and what the things that they're going to want to see and do and how long you want to keep them there. And and all those things, right? So, some of them, would take multiple days to experience, and some of them take an hour. So, and that depends on sort of what the scale is going on there.
Yeah, and these first couple of weeks, I'm glad we have these questions, because the whole point of these exercises is to really get you thinking about, holy moly, it is so diverse. There are so many different ways to do the descriptors, so that, and it's not meant to get you all anxious and worried. It's more to get you excited about, okay, how do we, it's how are we going to describe it, and how are we going to figure out, what Mike and I do on a daily basis, more Mike because he's in operations every day. How does he define where his work is, and how is he going to do everything he needs to do to make that operation successful? And I think that when we look at all the different ways to slice and dice it, it's more exciting than it is nerve-wracking. It just means that there's a ton of opportunity and different ways to look at the same attraction, because and to your point, especially when you look at the big players like a Disney World, they cater to a bunch of different markets too. So so we would go down with the kids and do the family adventure, and we'd be up at when the kids were young, we would get up in the morning, we'd go to the parks early, we would then come home, have a nap so the kids weren't grouchy, then go back in the afternoon and the evening. But my parents used to go when they were retired. They never went on a single ride, but they did go to the shows. They went to they went to Epcot Center, and they dined at the finest restaurants. They enjoyed the pool at the hotel. So to your point now, so Disney World could be, for some, is a ridiculously active attraction, and for some it's a passive and relaxing one. And guess what? Both my parents, and when we go as a family, we spend a bucket load of cash. So Disney's done it right, because they've got both of the options. So anyway, all right, let's just go through a couple of these for a few minutes, and then we'll take a 5-minute break before we get to the next part. So so we got zoos and aquariums. So yep, mostly outdoor and some indoor. And that's a good observation, because the zoo does have large indoor pavilions. It's man-made, gated, ticketed, year-round, large, active. Yes, I would agree. Anyone else? Anything else we missed there? We can just put it into the chat. Michael, take a look. On the aquarium side, it's indoors, ticketed, large, gated, year-round. On the large, for an indoor place, I'd almost say it's a medium-sized.
Which one?
Ripley's Aquarium. It can be large. It's not massive, but what is it about? It's about 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, they do fantastic attendance. So.
Their attendance. And you know what? No, it's a brilliant model too. Much like mini golf, it's like an assembly line. It's all one way. So the whole experience at Ripley's, I think the longest I've taken in there is an hour and a half, and that's when it's busy. When we've gone with the kids and it's not busy, it's an hour. And you feel like you got good value for that hour, because you're constantly moving and seeing new things, but you're all herded in the same direction through the place, and right through the retail store and out the door. So they put through, when they first opened, they put through more people in their first 4 months than their other two parks, one in Pigeon Forge and one in Myrtle Beach, than either one of those two put through in a year, attendance wise. It was crazy.
May I just add, when you started talking, I mean, you made a very, I would say, great point, which is like what could be considered large for outdoor would be medium or small for indoor, because indoors cannot be that large. I mean, that's the biggest they can go. I mean, very, very few examples will go like what we say massive. Otherwise, it's just, this is the largest that they can go, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I would put.
I mean, there are some very large indoor attractions, but yeah, that, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
your cost, it starts to increase dramatically, right? So
Yeah.
when you start thinking of those things, so, yeah, you're never going to get a facility the size of the Toronto Zoo as a completely enclosed space,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
because
right.
nobody had the economics that would never make sense, right? It would
Yeah.
be super cool, and probably more enjoyable because the zoo is the hottest place on the planet in the middle of the summertime. But yeah, I think you're right, now that, you know,
Yeah.
there is sort of that when you look at them within their own little buckets, right? Then yeah, then like you know, in the aquariums sort of space, you know, that sort of indoor attraction,
It is a
Ripley's
large.
is a large aquarium.
That's true.
Not the largest, but it's
No.
large.
Yeah.
But then there are
Gotta go. You got to
examples
go
of,
to Atlanta for that one. That one's incredible.
yeah, or the shed in
Oh yeah, in Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah, it would be a really cool one to go to. But yeah, you have these sort of smaller sort of, you know, aquariums that are, you know, on a different scale. But yeah, you're right.
Um,
But yeah, the Ripley's Aquarium is a great, I would say, if you're looking at it from an operator's lens, it's a great example of how they took a small space and turned it into a attraction that can do an incredibly large number of people. And it's all about how they sort of laid it out and created it, like Chuck said, so that you're really, you know, you're on a path and you're going to take it, and there's not a lot of doubling back, so you go through. And that's why they were able to kind of, when they start out too, they can do those timed admissions and things like that, because they pretty much know how long it's going to take you to get through that experience, as opposed to maybe something like the zoo where you're taking your own path and going through those kinds of things. So from an operations lens, it's actually pretty cool to see how they were able to do that.
And just layering one thing in, you know, just to keep in mind for later on, it wasn't built that way by accident, right? They
No.
Before they even laid the first pencil to paper to sketch it out, they had talked from an operational lens on how are they going to be able to make the most out of the space that they've got and get the most throughput. It's called throughput. Is a very common term in attractions, and throughput means how many people per hour are you, or per day, or whatever your measure or your unit of time is. How many can you get through in a day? And the other word that you'll hear a lot in attractions is hang time. And hang time is the amount of time someone spends either at the attraction as a whole, or within a certain sector of an attraction. All right, so we've done a zoo and okay, let's go up and let's see here. I'm gonna go down to the ROM, and so Britt's got, so the Royal Ontario Museum is indoor, it's open access and ticketed year-round, man-made and medium-sized. And I think that I would agree with all that. I worked at the ROM, and compared to some of the bigger ones, and Mike, weren't you just in Europe last, or two falls ago or 2 winters ago, and saw some of the big ones?
Yeah, the Louvre is on a whole different scale, the ROM or something like that, or the Uffizi, or any of those, the Musée de, yeah. So yeah, I would say it's a medium size, or it's definitely not the Smithsonian.
Yeah. And Britt, what did you mean by open access versus ticketed?
That I meant like you have to pay to go, but everyone can go.
Oh,
It's
okay.
open access for everyone.
Right. So it's not a VIP only.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. Perfect. Okay.
May I add one thing here? Also, to support Britt's idea, almost all museums have some days and some times where it's free to go. So sometimes it's like Monday, each second Monday of the month after 5, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not ticketed; it's open gate in this case.
I'll just put some. Sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. When I was in Europe, we took advantage of that to go see the David in Florence. The academia that it's housed in had free days like once a month, and so yeah, we went that day. and got there real early, didn't have to pay a cent, walked in, saw the David, and got out before it got too busy.
Yeah.
And that and those are usually, whether they're sort of there's sometimes sort of mandates or local mandates about sort of giving access to everybody to see these sort of unique cultural or artistic pieces that are definitely not, you can't go it's not like you're going to go and see the actual David anywhere but the academia, right? I mean, there's copies of it, but if you want to see the real deal, you got to go there, right? So it's about sort of, I think that those are mandates about giving access so that people who would not normally be able to afford or be able to do it. But then there's certainly the VIP experiences. If you want to be alone with it, then you probably could pay through the nose and spend 3 hours just staring at them.
Yeah. All right. And then, so Lauren, you've got Fort Erie. At first I was like, what, the town? There's not much there, but you actually mean the fort. So
I don't know. I've had some wild nights in Fort Erie.
yeah. So we got outdoor year-round free. I didn't realize it was free to go in. I thought Fort Erie cost money. That's awesome.
Well, I went when I was a kid, or not
Oh.
a kid, like a few years ago with my dad, and it was like free just to walk around the fort and like
Nice.
where everything all happened,
Okay. And it's been years since I've been. Is it size-wise? What are we looking at? Is it medium for an outdoor attraction?
I mean,
it's pretty
like
big,
it's
isn't
a
it?
decent hike, so I would say it's pretty big.
Okay. Or large. Okay. Cool. All right. I like that. We got the AGO. Let's do a landmark here. All right. Let's do. Okay. So we have the CN Tower. We've got it gated. Let's just add a few in here. What else we got? Year round. And it's funny because it's a ridiculously big building. Well, tall and thin. But as an attraction, I'd put it as medium or small, actually. Right? Because we talk about, go back to the idea of throughput. There's a pinch point, and the pinch point is the elevators. You can only get so many people up and down at any given time, so they have a capacity issue. Would anyone have a different idea about that? Mike, what do you think?
I guess it's just how you define scale, right? So
yeah.
If you're defining it based on the number of sort of people that can be put through it, then yeah, it's definitely not in the sort of large category. I don't think they're doing millions.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely. In terms of the scale of the attraction or the landmark, I guess they don't build them much bigger. So but yeah, it doesn't take up a lot of space horizontally, just vertically.
That's true. Yeah. So Britt said big on the outside, small on the inside. So we got like a large on the size, medium in terms of the attendance and the throughput and stuff. The London Tower, Taj Mahal year-round free man-made, which we talked about in the chat there, which is awesome. Okay. I'm just conscious of everyone's time. Let's do the zip lining. So it's an outdoor attraction. Yep, it's man-made, it's seasonal, it's ticketed, it's active, domestic international attraction. I think I like that. I'm not sure if you're specifically talking about like treetop trekking or the treetop eco adventure that's here in Canada. I'm sure there are some around the world that could be year-round, but if we're talking specifically about the Ontario ones, I do believe that they are only seasonal, because that would be really, really cold. Cool. We have Algonquin Park, Conservation Park. So Algonquin Park is interesting. You can drive through it for free, but if you want to walk on a trail or anything, then it's ticketed. It's not gated, but ticketed. Or if you try to go for free, you'll get ticketed.
You need a permit to camp, I believe. Yeah, but you can walk a hike on it.
No, you need a day pass.
Okay.
You need to buy a day pass to do it, or you get a ticket. It's like all public gardens. Bouchard, yeah, outdoor man-made, medium-sized, year-round ticketed. Who put that one in? Where's, I'm not familiar with this garden. Where is this one?
Bouchard?
I put that one in. It's in Victoria, BC. It's a really big
Oh,
attraction out there.
yes, I was
It's
just there.
beautiful.
I was just there and I did not go there. I went for a sushi lunch instead, and then went to a new man-made attraction up the coast that is a huge tower like that spirals up, all made of wood, that overlooks the bay. It was very interesting. I probably should have gone to the gardens. In Vancouver Island as an outdoor adventure, outdoor year round, open access, paid and free. Yep. Wet and dry. Okay. It's true. I was just, like I said, we Trish and I, with Patch, our youngest, and my best friend's daughter, were out there, and we did the whale watching. We drove to Tofino when we body surfed in Tofino. Like we did all sorts of cool stuff on the island, and it was all outdoor adventure stuff. Kayaking, Lauren, good one. So outdoors, wet year round, yet depending on where you are, and at cost, it's gonna, yes, either you can buy a kayak or rent one. It's true. And then there's different types of kayaking. My mind instantly went to whitewater kayaking, but we did sea kayaking while we were out there, which is a totally different experience than the craziness of being on a river. And then Bay of Fundy, it is outdoor adventure, cool, but you might be able to put Bay of Fundy into, I don't say why I'm saying Fundy, into Landmark as well. It is definitely one of those things that a lot of people have heard about, the backwards river and all of those things. If you've not been to the Bay of Fundy, when the bell rings, start going back towards shore, because that's when the tide turns, and it can come back in as fast as you can walk. So, and then in family entertainment, you've got my place, Glow Zone. It's indoor, it's gated, it's year round, it's active. That's how we bill ourselves. Lauren, I like the idea of destination restaurants or attractions that are the restaurants, and I think you picked a good one. It's indoor, costly, VIP year round. VIP in that you've got to probably book well in advance to get a table, and then you pay extra to get yelled at by Gordon.
Does he work in the restaurant? I mean, or is he just name on the marquee?
Maybe he's virtual. Maybe he's just there virtually.
I don't think he's there all the time, but I think he definitely stops by a lot to like quality check his food and stuff.
That's a good.
Well,
Yeah.
his reputation is at stake, right? He's putting his name on.
Yeah, exactly.
I like, so you've got Brittany, you got Clifton Hill there, and I think that's an interesting one, because I think you're right. It's a family entertainment center, and this is one of
It's
those
many family entertainment centers.
Well, that's exactly right. They've created a destination. The other place that's like that. So many different companies or types of attractions have clustered together to create a destination of family entertainment between the wax museums and the mini golf, and now they got the Mario Kart and the huge Ferris wheel, and all of those things with the restaurants have created a family entertainment center destination. The other place that when I think about that is Old Town. Is it
Orlando.
Old Town Orlando, which is in Kissimmee, just outside of the parks, and they've done the exact same thing where they have all sorts of these smaller attractions have grouped together and work together to compete against places like Disney World and things like that. I think it's year round. A lot of the stuff all the indoor stuff's open year round. It's definitely heavier through the months that there's no snow on the ground, for sure. We got movie theaters and bowling and mini golf. We have Palladium, trampoline parks, Discovery Center, laser tag, which is good. It's, family indoor, outdoor ticketed, open access. Got go-karts, medieval times. Yep, family indoor ticketed, man-made, small, year round. What I think, what I wanted to try to show here is that you've got, when you look at the amusement parks and the zoos and even the cultural, the quantity of them is much smaller than just the sheer volume of family entertainment centers, because a lot of family entertainment centers, they rely very heavily on their local market to sustain them. And then, they support things like sport tourism when the sports teams come in. At Glow Zone, because we're close to the airport, we sometimes will get families that will, or couples that will show up who have a layover and we're looking for something to do. But the tourism side of things is very small. And that's why there's so many. Rock climbing walls are indoor rock climbing gyms, and they now have the ninja courses and there's just a sheer volume because of the size, because they're small, that their overheads aren't as big, and they can be sustainable with fewer visits. And we threw festivals. I know we're not going to be focused on festivals and events, but we just wanted to, same thing, talk about how how they can be described. So the CNE is large, limited time, it's gated, it's ticketed. Yep. Maple syrup festivals, there's different ones, and some you have to pay money, and some are just free and to walk through, and they hope that you buy stuff. Most are switching to ticketed, and a lot of people are now ticketing, not so much for the money, although it's always nice to have, but they're ticketing so that they can control the number of people that are coming through. And more and more business owners are recognizing that there's a lot of value to people when it is a more intimate experience. So there's a fantastic place called Heartwood Farm Cidery, and so they do cider. They also do maple syrup in the spring. They have a huge grove, but they will only allow, you can book for 1 or 2 cars full, 10 people at a time, and it's expensive. But you get a personal tour, and you get to learn everything there is to know about maple syrup, and you get to taste as it first goes into the evaporators all the way through the process, and then you leave with a little bit of maple syrup that you were part of the creating. And people pay big money for an attraction or an experience like that. She could have, be like Mountsburg, which has their maple syrup festival, and they're putting through 3,000 to 5,000 people a day, but that's not what she's looking for. So you can pay $10 to do that, or you can pay $40 to do this intimate experience.
Yeah, another example of that sort of the festival industry going into that model would be the Toronto Christmas market at the distillery, which started as a free event, and you could go there anytime, and that's an attraction that was sort of paid for and developed by the sort of business owners in there to draw people to that area for shopping and to see the sort of cool things, restaurants and stuff that's in there. It got so busy that it became its own worst enemy, and that people began to say that, it was just no fun because you were just crammed in there. So then they went to a more gated model for certain days of the week. I think it's like Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, so that the experience was controlled, so that that it's still busy, but at least it's not impossible. And and then they had to look at that from a sort of operations part of it. And I think they donate some of the ticket money or whatever to local charities and things like that. So it's not it's not sort of 100% a money making sort of scheme to ticket those days, although I'm sure they're making some money off of that in terms of targeting their busiest days. But some of it was just to protect the integrity of the attraction, so that it was for the people going to it, that it works. And some of that is a consideration when you look at what you're doing in terms of if it's going to draw lots of people, then you do get to this sort of tipping point where there's too many. In the amusement park world, we had those things where it's like there's a fine line between having an amusement park with nobody in it is not much fun. If you're there, you get to go on all the rides and do all that stuff, but you miss the energy of the park. Then you get to this certain sort of mass of attendance in a park where the draw of the crowd becomes an attraction in itself, because people are drawn to like those sort of things, the energy, I'll call it, or this sort of feeling of, this must be great because a lot of people are doing it. And then you get to the point where it's too busy and this is just a horrible experience because I'm just being pushed around in a crowd, or that I'm not being able to use all the things that I want to do, or I'm waiting too long in line. And so some of those are things that, an operator has to think about in terms of, what there is, that sort of, you want to be busy, but you don't want to be pushed to your maximum, because then that sort of, it's sort of, like I said, it changes the experience, or it diminishes it, so that the people using it don't sort of get as much out of it, or that, and then all of a sudden you have reputational issues, or people sending in, Google reviews about that they had a terrible time and so on. And it's just a vicious cycle.
Okay, I think let's end there. I think we've got a good cross section. We've taken a good chunk of our time today with this, but this is a key component, I think, of starting to get your thinking about what's heading next. Let's take it's 9:24 on my clock. Let's take till 9:30. Everyone have a quick break, top up your coffees, and we'll come right back. Okay. Alrighty. If you just type in the chat that you're back, that'd be great. Brittany. No. All right, well, I'm sure everyone else will be back within a few minutes. Okay, so now that we've started to, put it all together and understand all the different attractions and the themes, let's start talking about operations. And just what operations entails, in these attractions, all these different types of attractions. So we're actually going to jump right to another Padlet. What do I got to do here? Where is my screen? There we go. And I got to share the link, and I will copy the link and post it into here. So you guys can all get into that Padlet. And really what we want each of you to just start thinking of words or a sentence or whatever you want that can sort of describe what you think operations is. And it can, and then we'll have a discussion about that. And then we're going to go into sort of the formal definition like we did last week. And then we'll talk about our definition of it. And then we'll go from there. Once again, if you're having any difficulty getting in or typing your thoughts, then just put it in the chat and we'll add it up there for you. Yep. Oh yeah, I did this so we can move them all around. So we got marketing.
Look at that. You're just a whiz with this Padlet now, Chuck.
I am. Hey, for $10 a month, I better be. Can't. That's it. Yeah, human resources. Group those two together. They are two different things, though. I think I love that we can have that differentiation. Now, what do you mean by resources?
I would say everything like will help you to make this business successful, whether assets, whether could be like things that are physical, tangible, and things that are not physical too. All of these are resources that will help you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to add a comment there, asset management. And then resources is the physical, you said the physical resources. Okay. Oh, I see. That's how that works. Okay. Counting. Great. Here. All right. I'm only hearing from two people. Who else has got stuff? Thank you, Britt. Is anyone having trouble logging in, or are we doing okay? Oh, perfect. Safety. Who's anonymous here?
Well, that's why it's anonymous, Jeff.
I think should put their name on it so we know who's all going in there.
Sales campaigns at the bottom there. No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Put that down.
Services from Brit.
Put that. And it's marketing. Thank you. So I can go up in here. Don't know why they're showing up at the bottom. It's fine.
Yeah, I had to expand the window because they were like below what I could
Yeah.
see. So
Accessibility. That's a good one.
I'm going to send a sharply written letter to the Padlet customer service.
I know. Look, I keep having to go further and further down. That's good. I'll just keep bringing them up. Maintenance. Put that right there.
Oh, I like maintenance. It's my favorite.
All right, we'll give it a let's think of a few more here, and then we'll switch out of this, and then we'll switch back to it after we go through the definition, and we'll see. But I'm finding it interesting where we're going with this, and I like it. Anything else? There's some people I think we probably haven't heard from, so if you could, if you want to add in a few ideas, that'd be awesome. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to end there. So I'm going to stop that share, or I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to share that. All right. Can you see? All right. So you guys can see the what is operations?
Yep.
Okay, good. That's important. All right. So we switched to the Padlet. We've done that. So from the formal definition is performance of a practical work of something involving the practical application of principles or processes. And then operations, plural, means the agency of an organization charged with carrying on the principal planning and operating functions of a headquarters and its subordinate units. That's pretty dry, but it does sort of define what operations is. Michael, would you agree that those are the two that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That would be, and that, I mean, it becomes such as we saw in the Padlet, and we'll continue seeing the Padlet, that means a lot. There's a lot that goes on, and so how you define it. So
okay, so the way that we define operations from an attraction standpoint, it is the processes involved with providing the very best guest service and experience in a safe, efficient, effective, and profitable manner. So that is how we have defined. Let's see what the next one is. Okay. what operations is, in a nutshell, that is what operations does. So if I switch us back to the Padlet, which you would think I could start doing. There we go. Let's go back to the Padlet is, there we go. Okay. So this it's some of the stuff we have here is actually going to come into the next Padlet. We've talked a lot about types of operations within an attraction. So we've listed some of those things out. When it comes to what is operations typically is their job isn't to find the funding. There has to be an operating procedure behind that. This is where things get complicated. You know, arranging for sales. Oh, logistics. There we go. That's a good one. You know, there is a sales team. They aren't operations based. They're revenue drivers, but they need to work with the operations people to make sure it can work. Kind of like our story that we ended with last week about the helicopter rides and the difference between the person who was in charge of revenue, which was me, and the realities of the operations of the event that was sold.
That was me.
That was you. So actually, I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to leave this one, because I think that what we want to do is, because we've already got a few things here, we're going to go to what types of operations are in an attraction. And so there's a couple that I'm just going to add in because you grabbed them from the last one. So maintenance is a type of operation that needs to be done at an attraction. I'm just going to go back. So maintenance, risk management, safety, accessibility, logistics. So this column here, I'm just going to copy and paste. And so Brittany, what did you mean by strategies and projects? Because I think that is a fit. Oh, she might not. Oh, there you are.
With that one, I kind of I guess goes in with like marketing strategies and like projects and campaigns and stuff to bring in either revenue or business or customers or whatever.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, when you were looking at special, I was thinking special projects in terms of putting in a new attraction or something like that. So that sort of fits on the marketing side, campaigns. So I'm going to put these ones in. Mike, what else fits up here? Staffing and human resources.
Yeah, that can. Yeah. I think services.
Yeah.
Would be one. There's many different types of services, but I guess the more sort of strict definition of it. So yeah. So when we look at this one, types of operations and attractions, this new Padlet, kind of where we're getting at here is, what are the this sort of groupings of sort of, we'll call it tasks or sort of areas of focus that the operations department or division, or however they categorize it, what would be sort of fall under the umbrella of operations at an attraction. And we'll kind of talk more as we go along how that sort of differs in based on some of the attributes we talked about. But think about those kinds of things, like what sort of, if you were the operations person at this attraction, what are some of the areas that you would you would be sort of attuned to or focused on, or have some direct sort of, influence on as you kind of, went through that.
Yeah, so feel free to start thinking about it, and start typing away, because this is the next big part is to really start to think about what areas of an attraction do operations need to have their fingers in the pot or in the pie or whatever that saying is.
Here, I'll drop one in just as an example.
Yeah.
I'm anonymous today.
All right. Yeah, so coordination, and can I add in /logistics? Because I think that was on the other one. I'm just gonna update that. I think that makes good sense. Okay, well, give it a couple of minutes to give you perfect research. Oh, that's a good one. Crowd management. Yep. Okay, is the lack of people putting stuff up because of we've created confusion, or you're just having a hard, I haven't explained what we're looking for clearly, or it's just 9:47 in the morning and we're just not there yet. I want to make sure that that what we're talking about right here is A, we haven't lost you, and B, you're still engaged and enjoying what we're doing. Member services, perfect.
I mean, as they go up on the Padlet, I'm starting to understand it more, but definitely after you finished explaining it, I was still kind of like, okay, I still don't quite understand what the difference is between the first Padlet and this Padlet.
Well, what I was trying to do with and Arba, we were trying to see if we could get to that definition of what operations is, and so in your next year when we're doing this, we will probably have to make some adjustments so we have a better can make this one easier to get to sort of that big picture thinking that got us to that definition that we'll go back to about what operations is responsible for. And so now that we know what operations is responsible for, if we can go back to that definition, I'll just read it again. The processes involved with providing the very best guest service and experience in a safe, efficient, effective, and profitable manner. So if that's what it's responsible for, now we're thinking about what functions within an attraction does operations need to have their fingers in. So I'm not sure, are you still seeing my Padlet? So I'll add in one or two more that that will, I think, help along the way. Okay, so they'd be, yes, admissions, training, advertising, not so much. No, I'm just going to edit that. On the profit side, they're responsible for, Mike, how would you describe it? Responsible for?
I think the best way to describe that, it's sort of on the profit side and advertising. We talked about in the last class that, I think I made a comment that, operations doesn't necessarily bring in the revenue, but they can definitely spend. And so where operations, and we're going to get into that much later in the course, is, one of the roles of operations, or like an operations manager or operations whatever, is to sort of spend the resources of the attraction in the most efficient and effective way. So that could be about, some of it about just your sort of resource utilization. So, you're not spending on, sort of things that you don't need, or that, if let's say your responsibility is to take care of inventory management, then, we'll go with something as simple as buying toilet paper, that you are buying enough that you never run out, but you're not buying so much that you end up having to build a building to house all of that. But there are a lot of considerations in operations that, in every sort of park that I worked in, the operations budgets are huge, and you can easily spend your way through a lot of stuff, and then at the end you have to sort of account for that. And in the end, this is definitely not a not-for-profit situation.
Yeah.
So the objective is to be profitable. So there is a balance between, and we'll get into that, is sort of, where does operations sit in the overall sort of economics of the industry. If you're not out there sort of driving business in the more traditional sense, although you do affect the attendance in terms of your performance, but how do you sort of manage your resources and your spend, whether it be labor or consumables, or purchasing of goods and services for the park, or the attraction, or whatever it is, that you're spending it in the most efficient way. So you could be running some really, a fairly small attraction like we listed there, and you're going to have a very small budget, and you're going to have to decide whether you want to buy one thing or another thing, and those are choices for you, right? And
That's
so
right. Okay, so any other questions? Operations manages all these components. It depends, once again, Brittany, it depends on the size and the scope of the operation. So, and this is actually, it's a great question. It's leading right into next week's lesson, where we're going to have differentiate between a big and a small attraction. What departments do you think a Wonderland has versus a zoo or a glow zone, in terms of operations type departments. So that's, so at a Wonderland, there would be someone who's in charge of admissions, right? There'd be someone who's in charge of security. There would be a director of operations who's way up here, and then each of those operating departments works underneath them. So when you're in a big organization like that, the bigger the organization, the more focused someone's role becomes. Versus a glow zone, where Ryan, who's one of our partners, and Mo, who's the other partner, that are the operating partners, between the two of them, they do everything, right? They set all the policies, they set all the procedures, they make sure that all, the ordering is done, all the things that need to get done to make a glow zone profitable are done just by one person. So they are a jack of all trades when it comes to operations, versus a Wonderland that has a head of security, and then probably duty managers and all these different things, who have specific roles to play within the security side of Wonderland, to make sure that Wonderland is operating safely. So I think that's a really good question. Who wrote member services? Because I'm wondering if you're okay if I add guest/member services to that. Thank you, Talis. Because that is a big one. Okay. All right. Anything else? So we've got, there's probably a few more depending on the size and the scale.
Yeah. Definitely a few more in there.
Yeah. All right. So, we've got, we're gonna add a few, hopefully get you guys thinking. There's grounds. Keeping. What do you call the ride? Is it ride maintenance, ride security? or
Ride maintenance. I'm gonna put something in that
Oh, I
I
spelled that
think is
wrong.
more of a catch-all, but we'll call it frontline staff. So, because depending on your attraction, you may call them different things, but you're that sort of public face of the organization or the attraction. So, where the contact between the guest or the user and the attraction happens is typically an operations function.
Yeah.
Okay, so this definitely makes more sense to me now. I think it's
Mhm.
because like at the beginning of like the class, like or like last week before we had our first class, the way I was thinking of it was just like operations like as a whole, like what goes into running a whole business, like all the departments and components. But I understand now the difference here, what exactly operations with just this Padlet here. So
But
Oh,
Brittany, you're
good.
right though. Operations is all the components, right? Like, it really is. So you were thinking right along the right path. It's just now getting a good understanding of just how many components can go into the successful operations of a business, or the profitable, or we'd say a successful operations, but the success of a business. We've got advertising. It's interesting because operations doesn't really play a role in the advertising part, right? But really well-run organizations have operations people in the room when marketing and advertising decisions are being made. And the reason for that is so that you avoid issues like we had at Ontario Place with with the Heritage Day and the helicopter, because they are looking at, so marketing people and advertising people and social media, it's all about engagement. It's about, oh, let's get the people through the doors and let's get them excited and let's get them here. Marketing and advertising people are the glass half full kind of people, and then there's Mike, who is the glass half empty. Or actually, no, Mike.
Are you calling me a buzzkill?
No. Actually, Mike is. It doesn't matter if it's half empty or half full, because the chances are I'm going to spill it as I'm trying to take a sip. He's more of a realist, right? They look at it through the lens of all of these different departments, looking at it, what is 40,000 people at Ontario Place going to look like in terms of security? What is 40,000 people going to look like in terms of admissions? What is 40,000 people going to look like in terms of safety, risk management, guest services, the frontline staff, crowd management? The marketing people, the sales people, the people that's what I was doing at the time, didn't even occur to us, right? When we were doing it. It didn't occur to us that 40,000 people would be there. But the logistics, and that's, we had logistics on the other page, the logistics of it, and the operational nightmare that it could cause was not taken into consideration when the decision was made. So, and I would think that, you know, the most successful, attractions probably have the operations people in the room. And yeah, sometimes they're a wet blanket, but those who are if they've got a good working relationship, then the ops people will work with the salespeople to figure out, okay, we can't do it this way, but let's do a workaround, right? To make it happen. And maybe we'll use an example of that as our final story as we leave for the day. Okay, so I think we've got a good start here, and I think I'm going to switch over to the slides again, because I think we've got it all. I'm pretty sure we've got it all listed out again here. All right. So, all right. So we just did that. Let's switch to the Padlet, and then, so the next slide is sort of our take on where do attractions fit within, or where do operations fit within an attraction. And we got a lot of these, but there was a lot more that we depending on the scope. So we've got admissions, we've got grounds, cleaning, we've got safety, security, risk management. So all of these we've got. Emergency procedures, it kind of fits within that. We have guest services and customer service, and that includes, in my mind, that included the front line people that Mike was talking about. Those are the people that are front and center. Rides, water play and pools, animal upkeep if you're a zoo, preservation, curation. If you're in a cultural attraction, you have to figure out how to keep the artifacts able, on display without wrecking them. You've got education programs, you've got parties and groups, you've got food and beverage service and retail service. So these are all aspects of attractions that that we need to start thinking about. How do we operationalize these things? Any questions? You just type them up in the or go off mute. Do you think we missed any? Does this list give sort of a clearer picture of how we have to operationalize a business? Thank you, Brittany. Okay, thanks, Callis. Excellent. All right. So just for the record, because this is our first time doing it, we will try the next time we do this to be more clear from the get-go, because this wasn't meant to be confusing. It was sort of hopefully meant to get you thinking about it. So there must
was more of a journey and destination kind of play that, maybe right. we took a little bit of more of a scenic route to get to where we were going.
That's true. It's true, but we got there, and thank you very much for sticking with us as we did it. Okay, so now let's do it. We're going to have a discussion just in the chat here for a bit. So each of the operating functions we just figured out and listed is going to be different based on the physical traits and theme of the attraction. So let's take 4 of the common ones, which are the admissions departments, safety, security, and grounds and maintenance. And let's discuss how each would be affected by the size of the attraction. So let's start with admissions. So how is admissions going to differ between a large and a small attraction? And you can go off mute if you want. Or we can start typing. There's no wrong answers. This is a discussion.
So I guess I'll sort. Sorry, go ahead.
Knopf's there. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I was just like, I think that depending on the size, so it's like limited accessibility or like limited, access, let's say. So depending, like I would say, the gates, the size of the gates, the number of the people allowed, the number of the tickets per day that are supposed to be like sold, like in the case of your helicopter ride. So
Yeah.
stuff like that, the size will be like, you know, the service, whether it's an attraction or a service.
No, exactly, and that's a good one. So yeah, the amount of people through, the amount of wickets, like, or you know, the admissions gates. Mike, what were you gonna start off with?
I was just gonna try to sort of paint that picture in terms of, yeah, when we talk about the size of attraction, to think about like from an admissions perspective, how you know, we'll go with, you know, we'll probably hit on Canada's Wonderland quite a bit all through the course, because that's a large attraction in this region that people are familiar with. But you take a park like a Canada's Wonderland, which does an annual attendance in the 3 million range, so 3 million visits, versus something much smaller, like you know, we'll talk like a glow zone type of attraction is going to see maybe several hundred a day, at that sort of scale. And so, you know, when you look at that sort of, you know, the complexity or the considerations that you would need to sort of start thinking about on how you would organize yourself, how do you sort of, you know, how do you manage the difference in the variables, or what are some of the things that would be different between those two? You know, by definition, it's the same thing. It's admissions, it's an attraction, you know, it sits in all of our sort of definitions, but certainly not the same in terms of, you know, what they would have to consider, or what, you know, how they would approach those things.
Yeah, so somewhere like you know, and maybe we're trying to pull too much out of you, you know, in one day, because you guys have been extremely interactive for the first, you know, three. I guess we've already done 3 Padlets. We've already been. So let's maybe Mike and I can just walk through our thinking on this. So somewhere like a Wonderland with 3 million people, when it comes to admissions, Wonderland has a general admissions gates, so that people that are just who have bought day passes, and then so, well, first of all, they've got online admissions, so people can buy their tickets in advance, or there's a place that they can line up and purchase their tickets at the door, or you know, at the gate. But it's not really at the gate; it's off to the side of the gate. And so you line up and you buy your tickets, and you get back into line to go through the general admission door. And then Wonderland has a separate entrance for their season pass holders. So season pass holders can go through a separate set of admission gates to get let in and get an express. And then Wonderland has a set of off to the side, right, Mike, where they let the groups in through a different entrance. That's not even in the general admission area, for the school groups and the large picnic groups. So they don't even have to go into the main line. They have their own separate entrance. So from an operating perspective, the person who's in charge of admissions at Wonderland, right, when they were building this out, have thought of all of these things about how do we get as many people through the doors as quickly as possible, in a safe and orderly manner. And this is sort of from an operating perspective what they came up with. And now the operations department's job is to manage it, to make sure it's as effective and as efficient as possible.
Yep. And I think, you know, that's where you hit the nail on the head on that one, is that their primary, you know, all of those sort of functions, whether it's a small park, big park, you know, different types of attractions, at its core, admissions, or whatever you want to call it, the gated sort of, you know, scenario, the purpose is the same, right? To make sure that only people who have, you know, the proper access into a venue or attraction get in there. But when you start looking at all the sort of the scale, then, you know, you may, when you develop an operational plan for something that does 50 people, then, you know, it may be as simple as, you know, there's going to be a place and someone's going to meet them and they're going to take their ticket and verify it and let them in. When you get up into scale of like the 3 million people in a summer mark, then you're looking at, yes, we need to move these people. We need to move them quickly. We need to do it safely. We need to uphold all of our, requirements for admittance. So whatever that may be, between, they have their security checks and all those kinds of things. And we have to maintain the integrity of our access system, so that we're not letting in people that shouldn't be let in. And all of those things. So you start to look at the deployment of people, technology, equipment, how you organize, and then you differentiate, as Chuck said, different groups of people that you're letting in, and they may have different admission schemes built into their program, so that those, because you have different considerations for them, or you can sort of say, well, we're going to lump them all in because they're all part of one purchase, or because they're going to come different ways. So that's kind of how, when you look at the size of the attraction, how something like that would play out. And so when you start to look or think about attractions that you've been to, or that we've talked about in the beginning of this class, how they all sort of do differently. We talked about Ripley's Aquarium as an example of something where they use a timed ticketing scenario, right? Where their goal is to keep that building full. They know that we'll call it a conveyor belt of people that's going through this attraction. And it is a literal conveyor belt for most of their attraction, that, we are taking people in one door and out the other door, and we're giving them a guided tour through the facility that's going to get them to a place. So what their scheme they've developed is, we don't want everybody showing up all at once, because if you do, then we can only accommodate, let's say, 1,500 people in the building at any given time. And if 40,000 people show up, which is great for the sales department, it's not great for the operations department, because there's nowhere to put them. So their scheme that they came up with was that on their busiest days, that your ticket's going to allocate a time of entry. And so that time of entry gets you in, and we know that we can do 1,500 people every hour. So when you show up, you're going to go through. And so the attraction feels less busy and manageable for the people visiting it, and for operations, so that you're not dealing with this sort of mass of people. And so at the end of the day, you've got sales is happy because they've done 40,000 people that day, and operations is happy because they managed to have everybody get through that in a reasonable way. So that is an example of an admission scheme that was designed and creative and selected specifically for that environment, as opposed to just let's let everybody come and see what happens.
Yeah. And then,
May I just add that, for like a continuation of the point that Mike was just making, is that even not only the size and the size of the attraction in this case, but it's like the adaptation to new protocols, as what happens with COVID. Now,
exactly.
So the time slots was a best solution in this case, where people were allowed only to the premises for like 2 hours or something, so that they can get give the people the bigger the bigger number the chance to get into the attraction.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's a great point.
yeah, and in this case, the government was like the marketing department. They said, "Oh, let's do this," and then they said, "Okay, operations people, how are you going to actually make that happen?" When it came to the safety protocols, so
that's a real life example, because
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my time in the early part of the pandemic, when these protocols were starting to come out, working with my employers to sit there and look at that and go, how do we manage this? And it's still happening to this day to me, that where new protocols come out, and they sit there and we say, okay, well, how do we take these things and adapt them to our environment and make that work? Because those policies and things are being created by health professionals, or by bureaucrats, or people in different areas that are not, their primary concern is not whether it's easy, or whether it's going to be the most efficient means. Their priority is obviously in a different place. And so there's that adaptation that needs to come with it. And so a lot of places have had to look at their plans, even Wonderland and Disney and every other attraction, and say, okay, well, this is how we used to run it, but now we're going to have to do this to adapt to it. And that, hasn't always been the cleanest or the most efficient means, but when we looked at the, in the definition of the sort of key components or what the considerations are for an attraction, then, in this case, safety is trumping that, right? So your efficiency and is sort of a secondary concern to the sort of safety considerations that have been brought about by the current, situation.
Okay, I just want to, on the admission side, I want to juxtaposition what we just talked about for Wonderland with Glow Zone, because believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities to how we do admissions at Glow Zone, just at a ridiculously smaller scale. So, they've got 30 different ways to get in for their different types of guests. At Glow Zone, we have 2 computers at a front desk, and people will come up to the front desk and they will pay, and if there's a lineup, we will have a second staff call someone over. So it's that's all the same. But when it comes to our groups and our parties, they never go to the front desk. They actually they come in through the same door, which is different than Wonderland where they go somewhere else. They come in through the same front door, but then a staff member meets them and pushes them aside into one of our party rooms, so that we don't overcrowd our front desk and cause a log jam. So they come in, they get taken care of separately, and we tell them everything that's going to happen. We get them going through, and then at the end, usually one person comes up to pay at the end of that group. So from an operating standpoint, we had to look at the same things. We had to look at the business in terms of what's best for guest service, what's going to be best to keep our admissions area clear, and get as many people through as possible. So even though we're a small little operation putting through maybe 50,000 people each location a year, actually it's probably more than that, but whatever number of people we put through a year, there is, there's something we've had to look at it through an operating lens as well, to make sure that it was going to be the best thing. So Mike, why don't we go through safety, security, grounds, and maintenance, and we'll use Glow Zone and Wonderland as
example,
as those 2 examples. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think, okay, so we look at
you do Wonderland for safety and security.
Okay, so safety and security. So safety and security, I would say, you can use them as 2 different terms or 2 different things. So when we talk about safety, we're talking about the physical safety of the patrons, the people that are working there, and anybody else that's sort of involved in it. So you're going to have, all of those sort of considerations going on. And so, safety is a catch-all for quite a bit that's going on. And, in the operations world, in attractions, safety is always your number one. And and that, for all kinds of reasons, obviously, one that for, just strictly moral reasons, that no good operator is going to consciously put anybody in any sort of level of harm. So you're going to do all the things that you need to do, but then reputationally, you can think of any given attraction, they're not going to do very well if they're labeled as less safe. And a great example would be and not that it's true, but that, like, the difference between Canada's Wonderland and, let's say, the CNE, there was a period where the CNE had a series of incidents on their attractions, and that gave them reputationally a less safe image than Canada's Wonderland or anything like that. And that, like I said, that was based on occurrences that went on, but that definitely changed the mindset. So when you focus on safety, the operations department spends a lot of time looking at every part of the operation, from how things are maintained to how people are trained, to this sort of just general physical layout, and down to capacity, right? How many people are we going to let in this thing? to make sure that that experience is safe. You know, when you talk about like water attractions, like water parks and things like that, there are a massive amount of considerations for safety in terms of, you know, the lifeguarding and how you deploy them, and the numbers and all those different things. So those get into that. When you look at security, and that you know, sort of spans out to all kinds of stuff in terms of, from attractions about, you know, physical security, so it's the security of your assets. So, you know, between, you know, guarding those things against, you know, the things that everybody else would, you know, in the industry or in any industry would look for, you know, in terms of theft, vandalism, you know, sort of property damage, that kind of stuff. And then you spawn into patron safety. So, you know, security in terms of, you know, controlling crowds or controlling, you know, especially when you have events that involve things like alcohol. So when you're in concert events or when you're serving alcohol in places, you know, those kinds of things. So you're talking about that patron security, or you know, a lot of stuff that, you know, post 9/11 that changed the game too, in terms of, you know, what types of things would, you know, people allow into their attractions. So if you've ever been to the CN Tower, for example, you know, pre 9/11, there wasn't much of a safety check. When you went in, there was more about, you know, let's get your ticket and get you queued up and we'll get you on that elevator. And now there's the, you know, metal detection, and they have special machines that are detecting, you know, explosive residue, those air puff things that you go through and everything. So that was an operation security reaction to, you know, some real world, you know, sort of events that sort of changed everybody's thinking about things. So so when you look at security and the deployment of that, and, you know, the scale gets bigger and bigger. And, you know, one of the best examples, and if you want to look it up on your own time, is in the UK. They underwent a massive sort of, I'll say, regulatory sort of look at event safety, because they had an issue at a soccer match, and where a fire broke out in a stadium, and there was massive casualties because of, not only because of the fire, but because of, you know, people sort of moving in, you know, in all in the same direction, and you had overcrowding and people being, you know, caught in the crush and so forth. So they developed an entire safety program for their events industry, where, you know, you need a trained, certified safety professional on your team. And, you know, they undergo fairly rigorous training in terms of how to look at those different things about crowd movement, and, you know, how many, and it gets down to like how many people per square foot, and, you know, how many exits you need, and all these different things. So and that's all part of the sort of variables that, you know, you need to look at. And in, you know, different jurisdictions, you'll have different things to think about, but that's kind of how you go through that. So
Yeah,
what
so-
about you, Chuck?
Well, so yeah, so you know, at Wonderland, where they have the full departments that are dedicated to safety and security as separate. So at Glowzone, we sort of lumped the two of them together. On the safety side, on the guest safety side, when we were building it out, we made, you know, they're glow in the dark, and so it's in the dark. So we made sure that anything that could cause a trip hazard was glowing. Anytime we have elevation changes, there's markers. Because there's a lot of kids in there, there's no sharp edges. So everywhere that we had corners, especially in the laser tag area, they've got runners up all the corners, so that when people hit the wall, they're hitting into a rounded corner. We had an incident once in Brampton where someone just you know, launched a golf ball instead of putting it, did a drive, and it took off and hit a girl in the face who was out in the lobby and chipped her tooth. So for us, we're like, okay, that was something we had not foreseen, and we quickly put up a barricade so that a second incident like that couldn't happen. So sometimes you got to do your safety and security afterwards if you haven't been able to foreshadow all of the incidences that could occur, which is almost impossible to do. We do walkthroughs, so our staff are trained to do walkthroughs through the mini golf, laser tag games, especially when they are, you know, you're up at, you know, 12 plus people, have a staff member in there to make sure that no one's running from it, you know, all the safety rules are followed. So we do have our staff are trained to do that. on a much smaller scale. Once again, it's not a dedicated staff, it's just whoever's working. They know that every 10 minutes they do a walkthrough and make sure that everyone is doing their part. On a security side, we have cameras throughout the building. We have closing procedures that have it so that our all of our cash is in a safe, our cash drawers are open, that we've done everything we can. We have procedures in place in case someone wants to come in and rob us. The staff know what to do. We actually had someone break in one night. They smashed our front door in Brampton, and we've got security footage of them coming in, and they ran up they were getting ready to smash and grab out of the tills, but both of the tills were open and there was nothing in them. And you see the guy, he puts his hand on the desk, he's shaking his head, and he's looking around what else he could take, and he didn't even end up taking a chocolate bar, and he runs back out. So the police come, and we said, well, maybe you should take some fingerprints, and the guy said, there's no way, you're at the front desk, there's no way we're going to lift prints. But our staff, part of their procedures at night, which is grounds and maintenance, is cleaning the front desk, and they were able to lift prints and arrest the guy, which is kind of cool. So it's all, our safety and security is just as important to us. It's just done at a tiny little scale where it's the team lead and the owners and the staff are trying to make it as safe and fun environment as we can. All right, switch over to grounds and maintenance, Mike, with at Wonderland.
The grounds and maintenance at Wonderland, they would be separate entities, and while maintenance is multiple entities, but you again, when we look at this sort of volume or seasonal versus year round and all those different things, when you talk about grounds, you're talking a number of different things, from waste handling, which with the size of an attraction like that, you're talking about multiple depots where waste is being collected daily and removed from the park. Teams of people that are taking care of everything that you can think of, between cleaning washrooms to cleaning patios to cleaning boulevards and all those kinds of things, to keeping a clean appearance of that attraction. Down to people who cut grass and trim bushes and trim trees and doing all those kinds of things. And then when you look at a maintenance department, I think their maintenance department is fairly sophisticated and complex, because their attraction is sophisticated and complex, right? Because they've decided that their niche in the industry, what they're doing is they're operating multi-million-dollar machines. For example, some of those roller coasters that they have, like the Yukon Striker, that's $30 million worth of investment right there in an attraction. And it is not a simple machine. It's very complex. It needs very specialized skills and things to do that. So you have teams of people they are well-trained technicians that are dealing with those particular things. And then you have just that general maintenance of the park, which you're talking carpentry, fixing fences and doors and burnt out light bulbs and pavers and everything down to that. So we can you can go on and on about how that's organized and layered, but the complexity of that operation in terms of the amount of things that they have to maintain, and the specialization from down to air conditioning units to refrigeration to crazy, down to technical services, so theatrical lighting and sound and all those things. It gets really big. It's super. And Brittany, it's and that we talked about before is about the magic of an industry like that, is to make people forget how complicated it is to pull off. That it is that when you go in there, nobody even bats an eye that everything in there is working. But if they don't do what they do every day, and that park runs almost on a 24-hour basis in their season. If you don't do those things every day and you don't have a focus on that, then those things easily get away from you, you know, even in the environment that I'm in now in facilities at something like Lifetime, that, you know, we are constantly to maintain a high level of sort of appeal and standard and all that kind of stuff, the attention to detail and the work that happens behind the scenes to make all that happens, needs massive organization, from, you know, systems play to, you know, understanding, having the right training and doing all those kinds of things. Because when you walk into an attraction, and you can think about it as sort of that guest lens, that, you know, one, you want all those rides to work, or you want all those things to work, and they have to look good and they have to work as intended. And if you walked into, you know, a Wonderland and half the rides weren't running, or, you know, the lights were burnt out on the main street and all that, it changes the appeal or the attraction for that, right? So from a maintenance standpoint, that is a massive operation, and you know, requires a lot of training, skill, and organization to pull off.
Yeah, and then at Glow Zone, once again, so we do maintenance every day. And so we have Brampton's 6 years old now, the location, but because we put such stringent cleaning and you know, upkeep processes in place, making sure the staff kept it looking brand new, we've been able to get away with very limited stuff. But when it comes to the actual maintenance, it's Ryan and Mo. So we need a new touch-up paint. That's Ryan and Mo during, you know, when we're closed. Two of the, you know, the laser tag vests are broken. They've had to teach themselves, you know, back and forth with the company, how to do the minor fixes to make sure that the equipment is working. And when it's too much, they send it back to the tech, because we don't have the money to have a tech on board. We've
That's right.
bought all the arcade games. So we've figured out how to do all the minor fixes. We've got a company that will come in on a really quick turnaround, who'll come in and do the bigger maintenance stuff on them. You know, ordering the parts and that sort of thing. So we have to outsource a lot of our maintenance, the big stuff, so that because it's not financially viable for an organization such as a Glow Zone to have those people on staff. So we have to outsource. Still
You don't have an in-house electrician at Glow Zone?
No, it's just Ryan causing all the problems. You know, we were there a couple weeks ago. We had to change out a whole bunch of the black lights using the 25-foot ladder. So there was, you know, one up the ladder, two holding the ladder, and then shifting the ladder all around. Still the maintenance is getting done. It's just getting done by a GM instead of someone whose sole job it is to to do maintenance. So it's interesting. So what we're trying to get at here is, as we go through this course, you're going to realize that there are so many common elements across all the attractions. It's just the scalability or the workarounds or the tweaking that has to take place at different ones, depending on where you go. You know, to Brittany, to your point, yeah, everyone walks in expecting things to be perfect. When they're not perfect, that's when you hear about it. Like if we have a game down for more than a day, one of our arcade games, people start to talk about it, and those are the things that the last thing any attraction can afford is bad press or a bad review. So, you know, we got to keep on top of that so that people's perception of how awesome it's going to be comes true. How are we doing on time here, guys? It is, no, it's 10:30.
10:33.
So we can whip through a couple of, like that was the first one I think is a good example to show, you know, you go from a Wonderland 3 million people to a, you know, and who knows how much money to a Glow Zone. That's, and I'm trying to, I can run the numbers, I'll let you guys know, but it's got to be around 60 or 70. I'm just looking at how much money we make, but 60 or 70,000 people a year in a good year. You know, which they do that in a day.
Yeah.
So I put through in a year in each of my locations what Wonderland will do on a good day, because we're open, you know, year round. So seasonal versus year round. You know, when it comes to admissions, so let's use the zoo as the year round example. Their admissions booths are indoors and heated, so that the staff that are working admissions can stay warm. The guest is already going to an outdoor experience, so that they don't need to worry about it but from an admission standpoint. Now you have to look at it from the operating point of view of staff satisfaction too, and what's going to work. So a staff member working a 6 or 8 hour shift doing admissions is now in a booth, that has a sliding window so that they can stay warm and do all that stuff. Whereas treetop trekking, if you've ever been to treetop trekking, they've got a trailer, and a lot of the admission stuff is actually done outside. You do your waivers outside. They'll bring the machine outside because it's a spring, summer, fall type of thing. So the staff consideration doesn't need to take as much precedence.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at your seasonal versus year round, you're looking at those sort of factors, and you can talk about that sort of indoor outdoor too, but factors of how do you deal with the weather and the elements that are going to happen during that type of thing. And even simple stuff like Canada's Wonderland, for example, they 2 years ago started their Christmas program, right, to do the outdoor lights and all that kind of stuff. And that was a very new program for them. They hadn't done it before, and they didn't just get up that summer and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did a Christmas thing? That was many years in development, and some of the operations considerations that they needed to think about was, all right, well, we operate a park that's seasonal and it runs in the summer, so we've never invested in infrastructure for ice and snow removal, and parts of the park are not very easy to navigate when they're covered in snow because maybe there's slope issues or things like that. So they had to come up with a complete new operational plan to operate a facility that they've been operating for 30 some odd years, to talk about new realities in terms of, okay, we're going to encounter winter weather now, so how do we remove snow here? And what's our salting like, and all those considerations for safety and management. So that was definitely something that you can look at and say, okay, well, here's something that they've been doing for a long time, but just never really had to think about it until then.
And so at Glow Zone in the wintertime, same thing. We need to make sure that we have salt. We have to make sure that our front walks are clean. We have to plan for parties that are booked in that suddenly during a snowstorm are saying, no, we can't make it. And now we need to, from an operating standpoint, from an admission standpoint, okay, we now have to rebook them. When are we going to be able to fit them in? How's that going to work? How do we worry about our staff getting home if they've been working a 6 hour shift and the snow started at the beginning of their shift and now it's a blizzard, right? There's all these little considerations that that a business takes into consideration. Virtual versus in person. This is a really interesting one. Admissions, I would think, would be, if it's virtual, it's all online versus a mixture. Safety and security in the virtual world now is more about hackers. Are hackers going to come in and steal your information? If you've bought a ticket, are you going to, how do you make sure that your patrons are your guests aren't losing their identities and having things hacked or stolen? I'm not sure if on the safety side, if you were part of the early days of Zoom, bored people would jump onto random calls and do things that were less than politically correct, right? Throw up videos and do other things. So there was a safety issue there. There's all sorts of interesting stuff. And then grounds and maintenance. There's no grounds, but the maintenance and the upkeep and the constantly changing technology that's coming with the virtual world, the maintenance that would probably take place on these websites, like even in a year. Think about Zoom from where it first started to where we are right now. They've gone through a huge amount of maintenance and development as they are going through. That makes sense?
Yep.
All right. Mike, why don't you do active versus passive? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, when you look at active versus passive in terms of, your considerations when we look at those different, buckets, admission, safety, security, grounds maintenance, you're in an active attraction, where, you have that sort of Chuck made it, a good example of the, at Glow Zone with the golf ball, and those, that's an active attraction and things that you look for. In the water, like, another example would be, sort of the sort of water parks and things like that, where they're very active in terms of, access into the facility. And so you might need to have considerations for things like changing, or places for people to put their things while they're doing it, like a zip line operator isn't going to allow you to bring all of your personal effects on that zip line with you, because it poses a safety risk, and those items are going to come off of that, and they could injure somebody, or damage equipment. So you need facility to deal with that. Or another Canada's Wonderland example, the Winterfest they built a big skating rink as part of it, which is a really cool attraction. And it's beautiful, but you need all of the facility around that, in terms of, there's an infrastructure for where do people put on their skates, and where do they keep their belongings, and, all those different things. And then how to sort of manage, when attractions are really active, there's a definite, possibility that someone's going to get hurt. So how do you react to that? Do you have policies and procedures in place? Do you need on staff medical for that? So, do you bring in, there's all kinds of third party vendors like St. John's and, all the different ones that'll bring sort of trained people, or are you going to have them on staff to do that? To deal with those kinds of things. And that, may not be the same type of consideration as something that's a little more passive, right? Because you're not really expecting it. Or like a ski resort, if you've been skiing, there's a lot of attention placed on that, because that's a definitely very active attraction. And, they expect that, people are going to get hurt, because that's part of, if you're downhill skiing and, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are going to get injured. And so they put a lot of stuff about, obviously warning people of dangers and making sure they keep the risk to a minimum, but it's going to be there. So how are you going to deal with that and make sure that, if it happens, that it's contained, or that it's managed in a reasonable way. So, that's kind of how I would sort of look at the active versus passive one.
And then gated versus free. And I think Mike with the Christmas market made a really good example of that, right? So you're an operations person who's in charge of a free event or a free attraction like a Christmas market. And so on the admissions side, it's about doing your counts. When you get the counts too high, now you started to worry about safety and security of the people that are there, because you never envisioned there'd be that many people coming in. So now you're thinking, well, I had 2 security that were going to walk around, but now they can't even move. There's the guest safety is out, and the vendor safety is out the door, and so they opted to switch to a gated venue. But that's sort of an extreme. But if you look at just a regular street festival, they, on the admission side, that's usually they just do street counts just to make sure. Safety on the security side, most festivals and events need to hire paid duty, especially if it's a first time event. Farmers markets would be an example of those that probably do not, because it's a very set group of people that are coming week after week to a farmer's type of market. But they do where the whole thing is in these street festivals, they're set up in a way that when they are looking at where they're putting things, where they're putting the vendors, where they're putting the stage, where they're putting the food and the concessions, it is typically planned out so that they can keep groups into separate areas, let people wander around freely, without causing these pinch points, these congested areas. So that, and then on the grounds and maintenance, I don't think there's much of a difference between gated and free, other than a lot of the on the free is mostly events, or I can't even think of what's free anymore besides some street festivals. Like even conservation areas are not free. public parks, I guess, would be considered that, but whether that's attraction versus just a community asset, that's something that we can debate later on. But I think that when it comes to free, it's really about the safety and security, and that is all based around how many people show up. So on the admissions side, the difference would be admissions when it's gated, you could control. When it's free, you can't. A couple of years ago, there was a post that went out on Instagram, a beautiful shot of from an influencer of a sunflower field that's halfway between Georgetown and Guelph as part of Lavender Blues lavender farm. And it went up, it went viral, and that next weekend over 10,000 people showed up on this rural road and were climbing fences and were going in to get their picture taken with the sunflowers. And by the end of the weekend, all the sunflowers most of them were trampled. It was one of those things. It was a free thing that someone just happened to take a photo of, and the next thing you know, it was destroyed. The Cheltenham Badlands is another good example of that. It's been known for years and years and years as this really unique feature in Ontario, because it looks like the Badlands if you go out towards Alberta, rolling red hills and that sort of stuff. When I was a kid growing up, that's where we used to go and watch the meteor showers, because you could just lie on the dirt, on these hard clay hills and look up. There was no lights around. But the amount of people that would go, because it was such a photo opportunity, started to really deteriorate them to the point where they had to close them and make it so no one can go on them anymore. They've created a platform and things, but
that's a great segue to the sort of man-made versus natural in terms of the considerations for it, in terms of man-made attractions. You have all of the same sort of, we talk about admission, safety, security, but on the maintenance side, maintenance is a different thing, where, if it's man-made, then, you're maintaining a building or a facility or, sort of things that, can be fixed or replaced. Whereas when you're dealing with a natural attraction, then you're talking about what we would consider to be stewardship of that attraction, and where do you fit into that as an operator. At Niagara Falls, the operators on Clifton Hill probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about the future of Niagara Falls and the Niagara River and all that stuff, but might be active in some associations or in the sort of general planning of that area, in connecting with the province and with the different ministries about that sort of keeping stewardship. But where you might have something like Chuck said, where you have the sort of Badlands type thing, or you have something that's natural, that you are heavily invested in making sure that piece of sort of nature, or that sort of natural phenomenon is being protected, so that it continues to deliver for you year after year. And so that may be about how you manage crowds, or how many people you let in, or making sure people stay on the right trail, or not going into areas where they shouldn't, so that they don't deteriorate it. Example would be like the if you go up and see the attractions where they're like petroglyphs and in different indigenous carvings or pictures and things like that. You want people to experience it and see it, but you don't want them to experience it that closely, and that they're touching it or removing artifacts or things from it that are going to degrade it. Or when you look at something like on a global scale, this sort of if you went to Egypt, let's say, that they protect their sort of their antiquities in the same way, right? That they're man-made, certainly, but they're not making any more, so you have to protect it.
And on the maintenance side, so trails are usually a big natural attraction, all the different Trans-Canada and that. The maintenance of those trails is important for safety, for stewardship, because you want people to stay on those trails and not have to diverge around or off because a tree has fallen, or there's a washout or anything like that. So it's there's a ton of different procedures that go into place depending on where we're at. Let's stop there. So next week, we're going to be talking a lot about understanding the interconnection between departments through an operations lens. So we're taking everything we've done these first 2 weeks, and we're going to start putting it all together. Because that's what we're doing building blocks, and by the end of this, you guys will be able to do a full operations plan. For a made up attraction or something like that. So we're going to get you guys there. So with 10 minutes left, let's start. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns from today? You can either go off. Oh, we don't have many people left. Look at that. We lost everybody. Did we bore everyone today?
I guess we did. Oh, well, they missed out.
No. That is unfortunate. So Brittany, Talish, Nishad, anything? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we end 10 minutes early, because we've lost a lot of people. I'll have to reach out to
Oh,
find.
there we go. Well, Brittany and Talis are with us, so
Okay.
everybody else missed out, I guess. But
Well, I guess so, but I gotta make sure that we're doing
Yep.
doing our part.
Yep.
So, all right, guys, thank you so much. We will get everything posted up in the next day or so. Everything from today, and I look forward to doing it again next week. All right, so have a good one.
have a good week, guys.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Okay, see ya. Bye.